I don't remember the first time I tried to burn the house down, but I remember the last time the fire department came. They told me it was my childhood home. They told me I'd grown up in this peeling yellow colonial on Lilac Lane, in a subdivision so perfectly normal that the HOA sent monthly newsletters about acceptable mailbox colors. And I did remember that. I remembered the squeak of the third stair, the way the furnace clicked at 4:17 a.m. like a tongue against dry teeth. I remembered the crepe myrtle my mother had planted the year I turned 8, but I did not remember trying to burn any of it. Yet there I was, awake on the front lawn at 2 a.m., wearing only my boxers and a pair of rubber Crocs, shivering as the neighbor's porch light flicked on. My hands were black with soot. The right sleeve of my shirt, wait, I wasn't wearing a shirt, wasn't there. My skin was raw, blistered from wrist to bicep. A firefighter knelt beside me. "Can you tell me your name, son?" That's when I realized I couldn't, not because of shock or smoke inhalation. I couldn't remember my name the way you can't remember a word that's right on the tip of your tongue, except it's not on your tongue, it's in a locked drawer in a room you've never entered, inside a house you've never seen. I stared at the firefighter's face, at the reflection of flames swimming in his pupils, and I opened my mouth expecting a name to fall out. "Nothing," he asked again. I don't know. That was 12 weeks ago. The doctors at the county psych ward called it a dissociative fugue. They said trauma can do this, fragment a person so completely that the brain constructs a protective blank wall, and behind it, everything that made you gets bricked up in a tomb without a door. They asked about childhood events. I gave them nothing. They asked about stressors at work. I didn't know what work I did. They asked about my mother. I told them I saw her sometimes, in the corner of my eye. A woman in a yellow dress standing at the foot of my bed. But when I turned my head, she was just the glare of a hallway light. They wrote that down. They said hallucinations are common in dissociative states. They gave me a little blue pill every morning and a white one at night and told me to keep a journal. I kept a journal. I filled 40 pages in 6 days, but the handwriting wasn't mine. The doctors said it was, of course. That's how dissociation works. You can produce writing that feels foreign because the part of you that formed those letters isn't accessible. I accepted that. I wanted to get better. I did the breathing exercises. I attended group therapy and listened to a woman named Carol describe how her husband had tried to drown her in a bathtub, and I nodded like I understood, even though I wasn't sure I'd ever been in a bathtub. But then, 3 nights ago, the scratching started. Not the journal kind. The kind that came from inside the walls of my room in the transitional housing unit they'd moved me to, a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on the south side of town. The walls were thin. The first night I thought it was mice. The second night I realized it was too rhythmic for mice. It had a pattern: long scratch, 2 short scratches, long scratch, 2 short. It was Morse code. I know Morse code. I didn't know I knew Morse code. I spent the third night sitting on the floor with my back against the bed, staring at the wall, waiting. The scratching came at 3:14 a.m. I counted it out on my fingers. Long scratch, K, 2 short scratches, I long scratch, TTEN, kitten. That word stopped me cold. I didn't remember what it meant, but I felt a weight in my chest, a downward pull, like a hook had snagged something deep and was tugging it to the surface. I went to the wall and pressed my ear to the drywall. And I heard breathing, not the mechanical huff of a vent, a wet, rhythmic breathing, regular as a metronome, coming from inside the wall. I called the hospital's crisis line. They told me to take my medication and try to sleep. They said auditory hallucinations can feel incredibly real. Your brain is trying to process fragmentation. It's creating patterns. I hung up. I got a hammer from the kitchen drawer. I don't know why I had a hammer. I don't remember buying it. But I held it like I'd held it 1,000 times before, and I swung it into the drywall above the baseboard. The dust clouded my vision. The scratching stopped. The breathing stopped. And something in the dark cavity of the wall said, "Thank you." Not loud, not spoken through a throat. The voice unspooled in the air itself, like heat rising off asphalt. I dropped the hammer and ran. I didn't come back to the apartment until the next afternoon, and only because a social worker from the county called and told me I'd miss my meds if I didn't. When I walked through the door, the hole in the wall was gone. Patched, painted, smooth as if nothing had ever been there. My journal was open on the kitchen counter. New handwriting, that same wrong, slanted script I didn't recognize, had filled 2 fresh pages. You forgot her first, then her name, then her face. Now you have forgotten how much she loved you, but she remembers. She's been waiting in the dark. She found me 8 years ago, and I found a way to keep her. I kept her safe, in the walls. She has been waiting for you to come home. She is very hungry. I read it 8 times. With each reading, the words felt less foreign, like a language I'd once spoken fluently but had buried so deep it had fossilized. My hands were shaking. I turned the page. There was a list of names, 8 names, each crossed out with a single dark line, each preceded by a date. 2016, 2017, 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 2024, 7 crossed out names, then my name. Written at the bottom, fresh, uncrossed, and then a 9th name below mine in a different hand. A child's hand, wide, uneven letters as if written by someone learning to spell. Mommy. I slammed the journal shut. I walked to the bathroom and looked at my face in the mirror. I looked at my eyes, hazel, ordinary, set in a face I was still learning to recognize, and I asked myself a question I'd been avoiding since the fire. If I can't remember anything, who has been living my life for the last 12 weeks? I called the county record's office. I told them I needed information on a house fire on Lilac Lane. They transferred me to a detective, Detective Orr. He had a voice like gravel and no patience for my questions. You're the guy who set the fire, right? Out on bail. I don't remember setting a fire. Yeah, that's what your lawyer said. We're building a case, Mr. Collier. You're not supposed to be in that apartment. You're supposed to be in supervised housing. Collier, that was my last name. What's my first name? He laughed, didn't answer, hung up. I found my wallet in the junk drawer, driver's license, expired, David Collier, 34 years old. Address, 1428 Lilac Lane. That was the house that burned, that yellow colonial I didn't remember growing up in. I went back. I took a bus. I walked the last mile and a half through streets that felt like a photograph I'd seen in someone else's album. The house was still standing, fire damaged, tarped on the east side, but not condemned. The front door was unlocked. The smell hit me first, wet ash, chemical foam, and something underneath it, something older like a basement that hasn't been opened in decades. The kitchen was gutted. The living room was a skeleton of blackened studs, but the stairs were intact. I climbed them, 3rd stair still squeaked, and walked down the hallway to what must have been my childhood bedroom. It looked like a room preserved in formaldehyde. The fire hadn't reached it. The bed was made. The posters on the wall were bands I didn't recognize. A desk sat in the corner and on it a laptop. I opened it. It wasn't password protected. The desktop had a single folder for David. I opened it. Video files, 1 for each year. 2016 through 2024, plus 1 labeled instructions. I opened the instructions first. A man sat in front of a camera, blurry, dim lighting, but I knew his face. It was my face. Older, thinner, darker circles under the eyes, but unmistakably me. He spoke in a low, careful voice. David, if you're watching this, you've forgotten again, that's okay. I planned for this. She takes parts of you, takes your memories, your sense of self, but she can't take what you put on a hard drive. Watch them in order. 2016 first. Don't stop, and when you're done, you'll know what to do. I didn't want to watch. Every instinct I had screamed leave, burn the laptop, burn this house to ash, and walk away. But I clicked 2016. It started in a living room. Normal. A couch, a rug, a coffee table with a stack of magazines. My mother sat on the couch. She was pretty in a tired way, wearing a yellow dress with small white flowers. She was rocking, slowly, back and forth. She was holding something, a photograph, but she was holding it wrong, not looking at it, but pressing it to her mouth like she was trying to eat it. The camera wobbled. The man behind it, me, I realized, spoke in a whisper. Mom, what are you doing? She turned. Her eyes were wrong, not just bloodshot, wrong in their color. One was brown. One was the washed-out gray of a winter sky. She smiled. I found her, David, in the backyard. She was under the crepe myrtle. She came out of the ground like a root. And she told me she was so lonely. She's been underground for a long, long time. She wants to meet you. The video ended. I sat in that burned-out house in my childhood bedroom and watched every single file. I watched my mother deteriorate year by year. I watched myself become thinner, more hollow, more frantic. I watched the entity. Because that's what it was, I understood that now, an entity that came from the soil under a crepe myrtle. Take more and more of her until the woman in the yellow dress was just a shell. An instrument for something that spoke in root crack and insect scuttle. I watched the list grow. 7 names, 7 people who came to the house to help: social workers, a priest, a handyman, a real estate agent. Each one went into the basement. Each one never came back out. And in the 2023 video, I watched myself discover the 8th. A child, a little girl with dark hair and my mother's gray eye color. She was in the basement. She was playing with something on the dirt floor. The me on the screen said, "Don't be scared, I'll take care of her." She wants a daughter. She always wanted a daughter. And I can't give her one, but you can, David, you can. I closed the laptop. My hands were cold. My heart was beating in my throat. I stood up and walked to the closet. The door was slightly ajar. I opened it. There was a crawlspace entrance in the back wall, a small door painted to match the drywall with a brass knob. I turned the knob. I opened the door. The smell hit me like a fist. Wet earth, rot, something sweet underneath like lilies left in a vase too long. And I heard it. The breathing. The same wet, rhythmic breathing from my apartment wall. I crawled in. The space opened into a room, a root cellar maybe, walled in fieldstone with a dirt floor, and in the center, sitting on an overturned crate, was the little girl. She was maybe 8, dark hair tangled with leaves, gray eyes. She was playing with a doll made of sticks and twine. She looked up at me. "Daddy," she said, "you came back." I didn't move. "I was waiting," she said. "She said you would come back. She said you always come back, and then we can all be together." Behind her in the shadows, something shifted. Something tall and thin, with too many joints, unfolded from the corner. It wore a yellow dress. It had my mother's face, but the skin was stretched too tight, and the mouth was open in a smile that went too wide. It didn't walk. It unspooled toward me, and the little girl said, "Mommy missed you." I turned, I crawled, I ran. I'm in a diner now, writing this on a napkin because my phone is dead and I don't trust the laptop. I don't know if this is a journal entry or a confession. I don't know if anyone will ever read it, but I need someone to know. The list had 9 names, now it has 10. Because when I crawled out of that crawl space, covered in dirt and something wet, I looked down at my arm. And there, in fresh ink in a child's handwriting, David Collier. And below it a new name, the little girl. I should tell someone, police, a priest, anyone, but I can't. Because before I left that house, the little girl looked at me with her gray eyes and said, "Don't worry, Daddy. She's only hungry because you starved her. I've been feeding her. You won't even remember." I don't know what she meant by that, but I'm starting to forget again. The diner is closing. The waitress is asking if I'm okay. I keep looking at the door and I see a shape in the glass. It might be a reflection, but I don't think it's mine.